Have you ever had the experience of telling someone something that was really important to you, and while you were speaking, they interrupted you and started to give you their opinion or some advice? Have you ever had the experience of being upset, maybe even crying about something, and while you were in the process of telling the story, they interrupted you by giving you a hug or wanted to reach out and say, there, it's okay, it's going to be fine, and just interrupted your experience of your expression of what was happening? Yeah, it's pretty common. A lot of us have had that happen. Have you ever had this happen to you where someone who is important to you has told you, you're not listening to me, you're not hearing me, you don't understand what I'm saying, I can't talk to you, or any version of the above? Well, I can tell you that all of this is related to listening and how most of us could use some up-leveling in our listening game. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video: how to be a great listener. Welcome to my channel. My name is Heather and I'm a relationship and empowerment coach, and I love working with people to help them distinguish blind spots and barriers that they put in the way that stop them from being able to have the type of relationships and live the life that they actually want to. And in service of that, today we're going to talk about listening and how listening can be a skill that you learn and can really improve your relationships in many ways. So let's start with, when was the last time someone actually listened to you? I don't mean they sat across the table from you while you told them the story of what was going on in a relationship or a problem you were having at work. I mean they really listened to you. They listened in order to understand where you were coming from, what was really going on for you, how you were feeling, really getting your world. We all like to think that we're great listeners, but the truth is most of us suck at it. Most people, especially in close relationships, listen for how to fix the problem, or they assume they know what the other person is talking about, or they listen for what they did wrong, what they're going to be accused of, so they can defend themselves. That means that while the other person is speaking, the person who's supposed to be listening is not really listening. They're kind of half listening and half thinking about the response, multitasking, which we've heard is not actually a thing. If your intended outcome is to create connection or have long-term, satisfying, happy relationships, that approach will not work. Being listened to, having someone really get your world, is a really powerful experience. So often in our fast-paced, get to the answer, get it done and move on culture, the art of listening will fall by the wayside. And that's a real shame, because the truth is nothing builds connection faster than effective listening. And that's what we're all craving, is connected relationships. So if this is a trick you can use, it's not even a trick, it's a thing you can do to improve your relationships, why wouldn't you? So how can you become a better listener? Well, the first thing you have to do is stop talking. Literally, stop talking. Close your mouth, be quiet. That's the first step. Some people think they're good at that part, but they really aren't. They really aren't. Just try it. Just try listening to someone and keeping your mouth closed the whole time. Just nodding along, having expression on your face that shows that you're paying attention to what they're saying, but not speaking. That's hard. The next thing you have to do after you close your mouth is stop thinking about the next thing you're going to say and focus on what they're saying, literally the words coming out of their mouth. And then you're going to listen for a few other things. You're going to listen for what they're not saying. It happens all the time. It's this kind of reading between the lines. Then you also want to be listening for the feelings they're having along with what they're saying. They will be having an emotional experience while they're talking about this thing that's important to them, and you want to pay attention for what those associated feelings and emotions are. And then if you're lucky, you really want to catch what this is really about. Sometimes people will talk about one thing, but it's actually about something else. And if you can catch what the other thing is, what the bigger picture is, or read between the lines and get, oh, they're talking about this thing that keeps happening, that is a really great way to show the other person that you're listening, have them feel get that you're really listening to them. You are attuned to what's going on for them. It makes a huge difference. One thing I've learned over time is that people often don't say what's really going on for them. Most people have learned how to be masters of beating around the bush, sugarcoating things, trying to say things in a way that won't offend or rock the boat because they're afraid of conflict. Sadly, for so many people, conflict actually means disconnection or the end of a relationship, so they avoid it like the plague. People are generally crap at clearly stating what's going on for them. So listening for that nugget of information about what's really going on can transform your conversations in ways you've not even considered before. Take this example. You and your person are driving home from an event. You notice that they're being a little quiet, a little bit distant. Maybe they're looking out the window while you're doing your thing. And you ask them what's up. They don't really give you much of an answer. You kind of like allow that for a little bit, and then you try again a few minutes later and ask what's really going on. And they give you some kind of sort of answer about how someone at the event snubbed them a bit, and that's just kind of it. They just, no, the so-and-so snubbed me, and that's all you get. So what do you do from there? Well, you could jump into the conversation and focus on that specific issue and respond to that specific issue with your perspective of what happened. Maybe saying something like, I think you're overreacting a little bit, or I don't know if it happened the way that you think it did, or maybe you misinterpreted what was really going on. You could even justify why it happened by, if you happen to know the person who did the snubbing, like, well, they're dealing with a whole lot right now, and I'm sure it wasn't personal, they didn't mean it, blah, 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 whatever that is. You could go that way. But these are all examples of trying to fix or problem solve or diminish what your person is trying to tell you. You see, your person is upset. That's the problem. And you want them to feel better. So you explain away why this happened by either diminishing it, solving the problem, etc. And that's the solution. That's the problem solving. The thing is, taking the conversation in this direction will not work. More often than not, this will create one of two outcomes. Your person will respond with anger or frustration or something else along those lines about how you never listen to them, or the problem becomes about you or the relationship, etc. Or the person will shut down and the conversation will end, creating more disconnection. Either way, essentially what's happening here is another brick is being put in the wall that is adding more distance between you and your person. Not a great thing. See, one of the things that's not involved in being a great listener is problem solving. Let me say that again. When you're really listening to someone, you are not trying to solve their problem. They want to be listened to. They didn't ask you for your opinion. They didn't ask you how you feel about it. They didn't ask you for your advice. They wanted to talk to you about how they were feeling about something. Listening and solving are two very distinct activities. Listening is a separate activity that occurs prior to any solving that happens at all. Trust me on this one. I know it's easier to solve the problem and jump to the conclusion and the solution than it is to listen to the problem, but glossing over the hard stuff, like the emotions that are usually included when someone is talking about a problem, often creates more of a problem in the long run. I get it. Being with someone while they're in their feelings is uncomfortable. Being with someone while they're upset or scared or angry or grieving and not jumping in so they can stop feeling that way is uncomfortable. Just sitting there and listening like you're doing nothing, being useless, is uncomfortable. But that's not actually what's happening. Even if you can see an easy solution to the problem, jumping in with that before the other person has indicated that they're ready for that information will just cause more of a problem. Being listened to is a huge deal for people. It makes people feel seen, and that is a trust and connection builder. Listening involves you empowering the other person to manage their own emotions. Listening involves you trusting that the other person is fully capable of dealing with the situation without you trying to solve it for them. That can feel uncomfortable for some people too. Listening involves you taking yourself and your assumptions and opinions out of the equation. Listening also involves you making the conversation about the other person and not about how uncomfortable you feel by being with someone while they're in their feelings, which again can be really hard. If you think about it, when you jump in and try to fix or solve the problem, you're actually making it about you. Don't believe me? Okay, well, next time someone you care about is upset, try sitting with them and listening to their whole problem. And when the urge to solve the problem comes up, like the urge to jump in with an opinion or a bit of advice comes up, ask yourself, what is this really about? Your first answer might be that you can see a solution and you just want to help them feel better by giving them the solution to their problem. But then I want you to look at why you want them to feel better. Yes, for sure, it's about you caring about them and not wanting them to suffer, etc. But if you're really honest with yourself, it's also about you not wanting to feel so uncomfortable with their discomfort. That can be a tough one, but it's true. Anytime you interrupt their expression of what's going on for them, a literal interruption of what they're saying by inserting your thoughts, your advice, a solution, etc., reaching out to hug them or touch them if they haven't indicated that they want that, offering a tissue if they're crying. That one stumps people sometimes, but if you think about how you feel when you've been really upset or when you've been crying, when you need something, you'll ask for it. If you need a Kleenex in the middle of crying, you'll ask for one. But if you're just crying and expressing and you don't need to blow your nose or wipe your face, you're fine. Someone giving you a Kleenex is actually interrupting that flow of expression, and that shuts down the experience and the connection. All of those examples are about you making it about you, not you listening to the other person. This can be a really hard pill for some people to swallow. The thing is, what's needed here when someone is talking to you is acknowledgement. That's very different than problem solving. That means you really have to listen to what the person is saying so you can understand what they're feeling, and you can respond with an acknowledgement or validation that indicates that you were listening to them while they were talking. Again, very different than an opinion. Then, after you've acknowledged what they're feeling, you get to ask an open-ended question to help them explore more about what's going on. I know, talk more about the problem. This can be as simple as saying something like, I can see this is really important to you and that you're feeling really hurt about this. What else is going on here? Or is there anything under the surface that you're not saying about this? Or what else do you want to say about this? Or there's so many options available here. Now, I get that listening to someone like this can be really tough, especially if you've never done it this way before. Trying this the first time can be really hard. And if you've never had it modeled, which most people haven't, or you're not comfortable with other people's feelings, which most people aren't, if you think about how you react when someone expresses grief or anger, you'll get an idea of how comfortable you are with another person's emotions. If you tend to clam up when someone is crying or grieving, or you tend to feel that rush of adrenaline when someone is expressing anger, it's likely you're uncomfortable with other people's emotions. So listening, by just listening, can feel really counterintuitive. Totally understandable. Your automatic reaction is often to react to something rather than just ride the wave. Add another layer of complexity here if the person you're trying to listen to is upset with you. If you think about that, I'm sure you've experienced it before, and it can be so challenging to be a good listener, especially in those types of situations. When your partner is angry with you about something that you've done or not done or said or didn't say, etc., listening all the way through to what they're saying without jumping in to rebut and defend yourself is really hard. Now, of course, there are limits when you're engaging with someone who's angry at you. Yelling, name-calling, throwing things, breaking things, violence of any kind are off the table. You can check out my blog post called Ground Rules Are for More Than Just Playgrounds, and I'll list that in the description box. And it gives you a really good plan for some agreements that you can make with either someone at the beginning of a conversation or someone you're in a long-term relationship with, and just have as a standing agreement so that whenever you're going to engage in a difficult conversation, you have a tone and context set ahead of time. It makes a huge difference. According to Dr. John Gottman, the first 3 minutes of any conversation will determine the outcome. So if the tone of the beginning of the conversation is angry or reactive, it's likely the conversation won't go very well. If you have some ground rules in place ahead of time, then setting the tone for listening is much more available, and the likely outcome will be much better. Okay, so to recap here, being a good listener is hard. It's not easy, and it can be uncomfortable at times. Being a good listener is about more than just hearing the words the other person is saying and then responding to them. It's about more than just not interrupting the other person. It's about more than not taking things personally. Being a good listener is foundational to having any connected and satisfying long-term relationship, period. Being a good listener is actually an art, a learned skill, and most of us have never had it modeled by anyone. If you're having trouble in any of your important relationships, consider it might be because you need to brush up on or learn your basic listening skills. If you've never had it modeled, there's nothing to feel bad about here. Listening is uncomfortable. Learning how to do it will be well worth your while. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you found some helpful information and maybe some insight for yourself. If you'd like to learn more about how to improve your listening skills, let me know in the comments or reach out with an email and we can discuss some options or ideas that I might have for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and this way you'll never miss another video. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.